Hello, Spiritual Center Spokane. Welcome to Talk and Practice. It's the Tuesday before Easter, and I am very pleased to be here with you. I, you can tell I'm not in my home. I'm actually in a friend's sun porch in Arizona, where, believe it or not, it is really hot in the sun porch. But it's my pleasure to be here with you, and I can feel you on the other side of the screen. My heart is wide open, and I'm looking forward to our time together today. So, I'm going to be speaking about Easter, and there's a lot to speak about. So, I actually took notes and wrote things down. So, I'll be toggling on my computer to my notes here in a minute, but wanted to just say how grateful I am that you're here and I have moved away from the Bible and Bible stories years ago, many, many, many years ago. My interest has been in living the energy, living the life, living the reality of God through me. And so I started by studying the Christian Bible. I was very much what you would call a traditional Christian. And going from that into studying other world religions to then studying the cosmos, the planets, the looking at creation itself and the magnificence of creation, and then having direct experiences of the divine, and in that losing interest in the traditional stories, but going back to visit them because they're powerful and they're the way that many of us have been taught about divine love, about God, about living beyond one's ego. That has been the modality in the conversation we've had between us. And so I go back to it, but it does require that I freshen up and do some research and grab some notes. So I'm going to do that here in a minute. Before I do, I want to say that Christmas is a time of celebrating the birth of the idea of the birth of the consciousness of Christ. And what all mystics say is that the consciousness of Christ existed since the beginning of time, since long before Christ himself did, that Jesus himself embodying the consciousness of Christ did, that presence has existed forever. Forever. It is a triad aspect of God. It is the manifest form of God. It is the human form of God, and that has existed long before Jesus and in many different teachers and in many different forms. This is just the label that we give to that energy that is so shot from heaven, so connected to the eternal God that that energy can perform miracles and can, through the love, change lives. And so that consciousness of Christ is celebrated and honored through Christmas, its birth. And then what Easter does in a big picture is it lets us know that that energy never dies, that the human body, that the form can die. And as Einstein would say, nothing ever dies, it just changes form. But the physical form of an individual can pass, but the energy of the eternal, almighty, ever-loving God is always present. So let's pray, and then I'm going to pull up my notes and talk a bit about Easter. So I just want to give thanks for this divine presence of God that lives, moves, and has its being in all creation, that shows up as me, it shows up as you, it shows up as each and every person that we meet. And in fact, I think of Mother Teresa, who has said, I see the Jesus, I see the Christ in the person in front of me. I am serving the Lord. I am not serving a person. And so I think of that this day as I'm thinking of the reminder that we're in the celebration that this energy, this love, this presence is eternal and lasts forever. And so I give thanks for the words that are given to me to speak today, to speak about this beautiful time of year that we call Easter, that is our springtime where we recognize life. And I give thanks for each one of us present on this YouTube video because it does mean that we're alive. It means that we're here. And as we close out a month that honored women, the Women History Month, and we close out the time of Lent, and we start looking towards the truth that this energy field is eternal, I do give thanks. So I bless each one of us, and I give thanks for the good life that we are and that we have, and so it is. Amen. Ooh, how lovely is that? Okay, so here we go. Here we have it. So there's really three parts, three primary parts to this story of the resurrection. And we have the crucifixion, and we have the tomb, and we have the resurrection. So the crucifixion, from a metaphysical perspective, we are looking at not what happened historically to a man named Jesus, but we're looking on our spiritual journey, what happens to each and every one of us as we step out and take this journey. And here we're being told that there's three big, huge, major pieces to the awareness that awakens within us that all is God, and that this energy that we call God, that is substance, is everlasting. So we're looking at this not externally, but internally. So the crucifixion represents the death of the false self. You and I each create a self out of protection, out of training from our culture, out of what we think is cool and hip, out of the time that we were born in, et cetera, et cetera. And so we create a self that isn't really us. And you and I are familiar with that self, and that's the part that dies in the crucifixion, that the eternal, everlasting love part of us arises through the crucifixion, tomb, and resurrection. This identity is built on fear, limitation, control, separation, and we're entering in with the crucifixion, the dissolving process. And I like to also look at the butterfly metaphor, where the butterfly turns into goo, or the caterpillar turns into goo and then becomes a totally and completely 100% different beingness. That's what happens to ourself when we go from living from the personality to living out of the soul. And the crucifixion, tomb, stage, and resurrection is that part. So, one thing to remember is the crucifixion is not a punishment, it's a transformation. And if you remember the crucifixion, I could imagine for Jesus it was really brutal. There's the carrying of the cross, there's the having your clothes stolen, there's people throwing rocks at you, there's people yelling at you. So it's all of that energy. And in my experience in my life, I've had many, many crucifixions where it's been the external yelling something at me, and me having to go inside to see what is being asked to be born. When there's a pressure that is so severe, out of that severity comes the potential for new life. And so what we're looking at here is the new life that is emerging. So there comes a point in your spiritual life and my spiritual life where the old way just can no longer continue. It won't hold us, and we can try our best to hold on, and it just won't work. And I remember when I lived in Arizona before, and I knew it was time to move. And it wasn't that I was like, although this would be one way to do it, it wasn't like, oh, I think I'd like to move. I'm done with Arizona. No, it was like my business dried up. My friends moved away. The community that I had started and was ahead of, one by one, people were experiencing miracles, and they were moving and starting lives of their own. So there was this experience of what once was gelled was no longer gelled, period. It was so interesting. And no matter how I tried to force it, it couldn't be, because it was done. It was complete. It was over. And so I finally said, I think I am being evicted from Arizona, which I love, 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 and being sent somewhere else, in which case that brought me to Spokane. And God knows what it's doing, because I was to be there to meet many of you who watched this YouTube, and I was also there to tend to and love my grandchildren, which was quite delicious and lovely. So when we try to reconstruct this identity, it just won't. It's done. And it is such a state of vulnerability. There is this moment where, and now I think of a lobster, when the shell is shed and they have to hide somewhere really safe because the new shell hasn't been born yet. And so this period of crucifixion is where the old is complete, but the new hasn't been revealed yet. And it can feel so dangerous, but it's also liberating. This is not punishment, this is freedom. And so part of the mental training is to realize something really good is about to happen, and I have no idea what it is, but I'm going to trust this process because it must unfold in a good way. So the crucifixion represents the ending of the ego, or a part of the ego. Like I said, I've had many crucifixions because they're different parts of me that needed to be complete in order for something new to come through. So on the cross, Jesus says, not my will, but thine will, meaning that we we turn ourselves over to our soul. We turn ourselves inward and say, I don't know what is next, but there's something within me. There's something higher. There's something beyond me. There's an angelic realm. There's the presence of God. There's something that knows what is next. And I'm going to trust that something, because where, Einstein says you can't solve a problem at the level it was created. We are not problems, but there's something about the consciousness that is dissipating that we can't create the new from. It gets created for us. And that's the shift of going from mystical to mystic, is that we trust that what life is doing, it knows how to do, and it knows how to do us, and we get to trust it. Now, does that mean we just throw up our hands and say, I'm not doing nothing. I'm done. That was bad English, but I liked saying it that way. That I'm out. No, that's not what it means at all. It means I am going to be quiet, and this is where the tomb will come in. I'm going to listen to my next messaging. I'm going to listen to what is mine to do next, and then I'm going to follow it. So, although it can look from the outside like you're lazy, like you're boring, like you're doing nothing, when we go through a metamorphosis, there's a lot that we're doing. And we aren't doing it. It's being done to us, through us, as us, within us. So it's happening. And I really do go back to the butterfly, where it is in a cocoon, kept safe, while it's being transformed into something else. You and I have times in our lives where we are to cocoon, be kept safe, and allow a transformation to happen. And this is where spiritual advisors are essential. Essential. The work that I do in this phase is essential with a client. Me getting support from a spiritual advisor when I'm going through one of these essential, because if we don't tend to our soul, then we can end up going into depression. We can put ourselves in psychological states that, and we don't want to do that with a spiritual action. So that's just kind of a side note there. So the cross is symbolic. The cross vertically means our connection to God, and horizontally it represents our human experience. So the beauty of Jesus Christ was he was human and divine. We are human and divine, and yet we forget. So the cross represents that part of us that is divine and that part of us that is human. And the horizontal beam being our human experience. And so in the center where those two come together as an apex is where our heart is. So the crucifixion takes place in our heart. This is where the divine meets this is where the divine lives. This is where the soul lives, and where the divine and the human come together. And so the crucifixion, it can be very dark. It's often referred to as the dark night of the soul. It's where hope goes away. It's where you feel lost. It's where you feel scattered. It's where many stories of the world end and we don't believe it any longer. Metaphysically, appearances seem louder than the truth. We all know when we have this feeling of like, I just can't go on, a feeling of failure, a feeling of fear. Things aren't working. We've come to a standstill, and it can be very frightening. But interestingly enough, when I've been in these moments, I also don't have a lot of energy in order to, and I'm not supposed to, in order to create a change. This is not a creative phase from the consciousness of the presence within us. This is a letting go phase, and it's really quite significant, and it's dark. And the crucifixion in the Bible story really spans over like a 3-day period. But in our own life, we can have a crucifixion period or a dark night period for decades, for years, for months, for weeks. It may not just be days. So there's a darkness. And then there's something, as I've said before, that's happening underneath the surface while the false self is dissolving. And Jesus on the cross, depending on the interpretation, either says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do, or he says, Father, for this I was born. That's what it means in Aramaic. In Aramaic, there's like two or three or four or five different translations as to what something means. So one of the translations, which I love, is Father, for this I was born. Like I'm the way shower. Part of my gift on the planet, I'm speaking for Jesus, part of my gift on the planet is to come here in order to show the way. Well, to show the way, I need to be crucified. So one of the translations is for this I was born. But another translation is Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And both of these translations are beautiful and both can be true simultaneously. Doesn't have to be a linear one or the other. So the idea that during this time that there's a forgiveness, and when I think of forgiveness in the context of crucifixion or the dying of the false self, what I think of is that as old comes up, it is an opportunity for us, if it is unfinished, to bless it so that it can be transformed. And that is an active part of our spiritual journey. It is myself blessing the experience or forgiving someone else for the perception that what they were doing was somehow wrong. In the big picture of life, when we step back and we see periods of immense pressurization, we can see and realize that the actors around us, that the people around us, that the teachers around us were all playing a role so that we would be forced into this dark night situation, so that we would be forced into a space of letting go. And so, from one perspective, they're jerks, and from another perspective, they are the living presence of God in form that has come to say, enough already. You got to get about your father's business, your mother's business, the spirit's business. And the way you're going to do it is through what doesn't feel good, but what will serve you. So either way, so forgiveness, blessing is part of this process, and definitely letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. Forgiveness is what loosens up the nails, love removes the weight, and compassion opens the doorway for resurrection. The crucifixion is not the end of life, it is the end of the illusion that life ends. And that is huge. That is huge, 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 huge. So, God bless you if you're currently going through a crucifixion. If you haven't gone through one, know that it's coming, and also know that this talk could be very helpful for you when you go through it. Okay, so the tomb then is the second phase, the second part, and that tomb is representing the going within and being silent. And I have had a very distinctly clear spiritual unfolding, and it started literally, then went metaphysically, and then became mystic. The bridge for me between metaphysics and mysticism was silence. It's silent meditation. It's spaciousness inside. It's having contemplation time. It is being with myself and God, myself in the divine presence. It's cultivating a relationship. It really is like a marriage with the divine presence. It is walking, talking, experiencing God, and having a guide, a mentor, a just having something wise within you that knows what it's doing as you guiding you. And this all becomes developed during the tomb time, during the time when we go within and we're in the dark. So this is a very, very important part of the spiritual journey that cannot be missed. The deepest human beings I've met, that I've studied with, that I love, that I've read, have all been in a lot of tomb time, and it doesn't frighten them to go within and be with themselves. In fact, at some point, you start reveling it. So the crucifixion is about letting go, the resurrection is about rising up, but the tomb is about becoming. Remember, the crucifixion is a letting go of the false self. The resurrection is the living from the soul. So, this in between state is finding your solid footing in and as yourself. So the tomb represents inner silence and it represents surrender. As we release our old identity, there's often a period where it seems like nothing is happening. We may not feel our old self anymore, but the new hasn't yet emerged. It's very confusing and it feels quiet and it can feel like waiting. It is waiting. But this is not emptiness. This is an incubation period. Let's take a moment for that. So, you and I know that all transformation happens in the dark. I want to say that again. All transformation happens in the dark. It is the light that heals, it is the light that reveals, it is the light that expands, it is the light that provides comfort. It is in the dark where the transformation happens. Seeds grow underground, a child grows in the womb, the butterfly, like I mentioned before, has a cocoon. All of life's greatest transformations happen in a hidden place. The tomb represents this hidden place of the spirit, and it's where God reshapes our consciousness. The world sees in this Easter story that there is a stone that is rolled in front of the tomb, and we think, oh, they've closed the tomb, the story's over. But the stone represents stillness, protection, and containment. It allows the transformation to occur without any form of interference. Sometimes in our lives, doors are closed and movement stops. Just like I said, things go quiet, plans pause. And you may go, oh my God, my life has ended, but this is not true. This is a stone rolling in front of the tomb. And the tomb is a place where faith deepens. And sometimes we find ourselves in a tomb after a major life change, after letting go of an identity, after loss. Oh my goodness, I went through a dark night for 3 solid years. And it was after the loss or the death of my father. Oh, Lordy. And it was the most beautiful, sacred, vulnerable time of my life. After we surrender something that's important, and sometimes we can ask for transformation and have it brought forth. But this is a time of quiet, not of absence. It's a time where the presence of God can be felt. It's a time of rest. It is a time of rest. I had 3 years where I lived in silence and solitude. And it was during this time that I prayed, that I meditated, that I listened. This was a tomb time for me. And I was brought to the place and I was given everything I needed in order to have that time. I didn't have to go out and earn a living. It was beautiful. All my needs were met. And everyone I've talked to who's had a tomb time has had all of their needs met somehow in some way. And and I think that some rehab programs where you go in and you spend time journaling and talking and being supported and drying out that can also be a really beautiful, beautiful tomb time. It's a time that represents rest. And a lot is going on inside. We have gestation of the new consciousness. We have listening. We have got integration going on. We have surrender. We're getting comfortable with stillness. We're being recalibrated. And during my 3 years of silence and solitude, I said to God, I'll give you 1 year. And after the first year, it wasn't over. So I said, okay, God, I'll give you 1 more year. Like I'm in charge. Okay, I'll give you 1 more year. After year two was over, I said, okay, this is the deal. I will be in silence and solitude as long as you want me to be, even if it's the rest of my life. And I will sell everything I own and go to a monastery if you are calling me to be outside of the world. And I let go of any timeline, any need to be in control. And after that, about 3 years, I signed up for a silent Buddhist meditation retreat in Carefree, Arizona. And it was a weekend, and I showed up day one, and it was all a silent retreat. It was so interesting. I sat in on a meditation pillow and these monks who were bald and wore orange robes came up and started leading the seated meditation. And what happened is every half hour, we would change our form of meditating. So we started with sitting, and we were to say to ourselves, sitting, 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 sitting for a half hour. And then we stood up and we did standing, standing. And then we walked, walking, walking. And then we ate, eating, eating. So it was all about mindfulness and presence and being present. And on day two, I was seated on this meditation cushion, and I was looking up at these monks in front of me, and we were doing our internal chants. And I had a realization that I did not want their lives. And this was huge because my whole life, I had my first direct experience of God at age 5, and my whole life has been geared toward living the life that is of service to God. And so after day two, I'm looking at these guys and I'm saying, I don't want that life. And that was huge, because it was just so clear that wasn't mine. I thought, I don't want a bald head. I don't want to be wrapped in a robe. And I don't want to teach people to sitting, 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 walking, 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 to that I'm out. And then I heard within me what the voice of my soul that said, You're done, Bonnie. Now get up and go live. And so after 3 years of silence and solitude, I left in the middle of a Buddhist retreat. I'd paid for the whole weekend. I planned on going the whole weekend, but I was done. So I got up, walked off the cushion, walked out the door, went to my car, and on the way to my car, there was a parade, a very loud parade with gonging cymbals. It was Christmas time, at gonging cymbals and Santa Clauses and um, police cars and fire trucks and all the noisy stuff. And it was such a contrast to go from silence and solitude for years to going to sitting on the pillow, having the revelation, being told it was time to go out and live, and then having this loudness. So I had to take it baby steps at a time. And I learned to have tons of grace for myself. This is how I learned that, because I kept saying to myself, you have not been around people for so long that it was uncomfortable, and I couldn't make small talk. So it was just like, do your best, Bonnie, and your best is going to be enough. So that whole period of time was interesting, but the tomb was so, so, so very important. And it was during the tomb time that I was doing prayers and meditation for the world. I mean, like I felt like that was my assignment. And there was a period of time where I was rocking babies that were in between death and new life. It was like angels were bringing me babies, and I was just sitting in silence and quiet and rocking them. And that was part of my evolution of tomb time and being of service in a way that served the invisible realm while I was being transformed. So it was just so beautiful and intense and different. So this, my notes say that the tomb is not a place of death, it's a place of preparation. And I would say it's both, but that is correct. It's you're leaving the death into the preparation of the awakening into knowing there is no such thing as death, which is so fascinating. Fascinating. So spirit is moving, life is stirring, love is preparing for the rise, and then we have the resurrection. And the resurrection reminds us, first of all, that we can rise above everything. We can rise above fear, we can rise above doubt, we can rise above limitation, and we can rise into love. We can rise into love. We learn to not fear death. We learn that appearances aren't as they seem. This is the knowing that we are in the world and not of it. This is the knowing that we are in the world and not of it. We see that our divine nature can never be and never is destroyed. It is about awareness, it is about aliveness. Oh my goodness, the most alive people you and I will come across on the planet are people who've gone through this process, and there's no doubt about it. Resurrection is not about becoming someone else. I did not start as Bonnie and then become Julie. I started as Bonnie and still am Bonnie. But the shift of what happens when we go through one of these transformations is so interesting and very different. And the most fun I've had is my non-spiritual friends, and I have many of them who I deeply love, when they will see me and say, "Oh my gosh, you're different. What's happened?" And of course, it's hard to explain, and I don't always explain, but they are feeling a different field and seeing me come from a different place of being, which is really cool. So, repeat this after me if you would. Every time I choose love over fear, I rise. Every time I choose faith over doubt, I rise. Every time I choose spirit over appearances, I rise. Resurrection is happening now. It happens when I forgive. It happens when I begin again. It happens when I release the past. It happens when I trust life. It happens when I remember who I am. Christ lives in me. My life of Christ cannot be contained. The Christ within me is risen. So let's just take a moment. Let's close our eyes together. There was a lot of content there. Let's just feel our hearts. Let's feel that apex where the heaven and earth come together. And let's feel our heart. Let's feel our feet, the energy around our feet, grounding ourselves. Repeat after me. All my needs are met. All my needs are met. The Christ within me shows the way. The Christ within me awakens me. The Christ within me brings me that which I need. And so, what a blessing it is to know that Jesus has shown the way, is a way shower, has said, "Hey, Bonnie, and all of you who are watching today, I am going to walk through this so that you, when you go through it in a different context, but with in a different content with the same context, you can feel and know and experience that there is something being developed within you, and it will be of service to humanity because you've said yes to it. And so I give thanks that each one of us becomes still enough each and every day in order to hear what is ours to hear, in order to receive what is ours to receive. And I celebrate this life, this conscious life, this Christ consciousness life, that there's a multidimensionality and a depth to each one of us. And so I just give thanks. I give thanks. I give thanks for this upcoming Easter. I give thanks for this week of unfoldment. I give thanks for the springtime. And I just simply give thanks for being alive right here and right now. And so for all of the good and all of the glory and all of the love, I say yes and amen. And so it is. All right, dear friends, have a blessed week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. I'm hoping to share with you the story of the girl who baptized herself because it is so delicious. And if not, whatever comes through will also be right. But have a blessed week and know that you are loved. Amen.